Before we jump into this crazy story, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Maybe a quiet cul-de-sac in Arizona, a bustling apartment in New York City, or a cozy lakeside cabin up in Minnesota. I love seeing just how far these wild Karen tales of chaos and karma reach. The sun had just begun to climb over the rooftops of the quiet suburban street when Jake stepped out onto his driveway, the familiar crunch of gravel under his worn sneakers breaking the morning calm. His breath caught sharply in his throat. There, right before him, was his white electric sedan, once pristine and gleaming, now a scene of chaos. The car's hood was thrown open like a wounded beast, thick white smoke billowing out in heavy clouds that carried a burnt, acrid scent, sharp enough to sting the eyes. Muddy brown liquid gushed from beneath the front compartment, pooling into murky puddles that quickly spread across the driveway. Tiny sparks flickered dangerously close to the waterlogged bumper, casting brief, eerie glimmers in the bright daylight. Jake's heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of disbelief and anger rising like a tidal wave. This was his sanctuary, his investment, his pride. How had it come to this? He glanced sharply to the side, where two women stood frozen in a mixture of shock, fear, and something bordering on anger. Patricia and Cheryl, the notorious Karen sisters of the neighborhood, were both middle-aged, each carrying the unmistakable presence of entitlement. Patricia, the elder by a few years, wore a short-sleeved floral blouse paired with gray leggings that strained slightly at the seams. Her lips pressed into a thin line, her blue eyes wide with an expression somewhere between guilt and defiance. Beside her, Cheryl sported a patterned top with dark pants, arms folded tightly across her chest, her mouth twisted in an almost sour grimace. They were holding the very charging cable that had been plugged into the outdoor outlet on Jake's house, a cable that now seemed like a rope tightening around their own necks. The air was thick with tension, the kind that you could almost reach out and slice through. A battered metal sign on a post near the driveway caught Jake's eye, its faded letters reading, "You charged the wrong way." The irony was almost cruel. Jake took a slow, steadying breath, trying to keep his rising fury in check. The smell of burnt plastic and damp earth mingled with the distant chirping of birds, a cruel contrast to the disaster before him. He thought back to the past few weeks, the subtle signs he had missed or dismissed. The almost casual way Patricia and Cheryl had started parking their sleek white electric sedan near his house, always lingering close to his outdoor outlet. At first it was small, a quick plug here and there, a brief charge while they visited the neighbors. But soon it became a daily habit, an unspoken theft masked behind polite smiles and a chorus of entitled complaints whenever he dared to ask them to stop. Jake's memory flickered to the first time he had noticed. He was mowing his lawn when he caught sight of the sisters fiddling with the charging cable plugged into his side outlet. His heart sank, but he wanted to be reasonable. He walked over, the blades of grass crunching beneath his boots, and cleared his throat. "Hey, that's my outlet," he said gently, forcing a smile. "You can't just use it without asking." Patricia had looked up with a raised eyebrow, folding her arms like a shield. "It's outside. Community property, right? Besides, it's just electricity." Jake had swallowed the retort that bubbled up in his throat. "It's on my house. I pay for that power." Cheryl, leaning lazily against the car, had let out a dismissive laugh. "Relax, Jake. You're being dramatic." He had tried again over the next few days, notes stuck near the outlet, polite messages left with the HOA board, even subtle warnings about the electricity costs. But the sisters had ignored them all, their arrogance growing like a wildfire. Every time Jake passed by, he could hear their sharp whispers, their sarcastic laughter, and sometimes outright rude comments directed his way. The sisters didn't just steal power, they flaunted it. Then came the discovery that sent a chill through Jake's spine. While inspecting some minor plumbing issues in his basement, he realized something strange about the electrical system connected to the outdoor outlet. The wiring was far from ordinary. Curious and concerned, he pulled out the schematics he'd carefully stored and confirmed his suspicions. The outlet wasn't just an electrical socket. It was linked directly to the septic tank's pump system. That meant every time the sisters plugged in their battery charger for their white sedan, they were drawing power from a system critical to keeping his home's sewage safely managed. Worse still, the constant misuse was damaging the pump, risking costly repairs and serious health hazards. The implications hit Jake like a freight train. They weren't just freeloading electricity. They were sabotaging his home's foundation without a clue, blinded by their entitlement. He felt a surge of helplessness, but beneath it simmered a fierce determination. This wasn't going to slide. He remembered the last conversation he tried to have with them, his voice calm but firm. "Patricia, Cheryl, you can't keep doing this. It's dangerous and it's costing me thousands." Patricia's eyes flashed with contempt. "Dangerous? Please. You're just making a mountain out of a molehill." Cheryl smirked. "If you cared so much, you'd be out here fixing your own problems instead of complaining." Jake clenched his fists, but kept his composure. "I'm going to fix this, one way or another." But deep down, he knew this wouldn't be easy. The sisters were powerful in the neighborhood, loud, connected, and fearless of consequences. He thought of the gossiping neighbors, the HOA meetings filled with petty arguments. Taking them on directly might only backfire. As the smoke from his damaged car curled upward and the brown liquid puddled at his feet, Jake's mind raced for solutions. He needed to act, and fast. But how? A soft breeze rustled the leaves in the background, carrying with it the faint but unmistakable stench of sewage, a reminder of the ticking time bomb beneath his feet. His gaze flicked back to Patricia and Cheryl, their angry, alarmed faces mirroring the chaos they had unknowingly unleashed. The stakes had never been higher. Jake took a final long look at the car, the damage glaring, the sparks still faintly flickering. His jaw tightened. This wasn't just about a stolen charge anymore. This was about standing up to entitlement, protecting what was his, and making sure the neighborhood knew that karma, sooner or later, finds everyone. And with that thought, he stepped back, letting the door of his house swing open behind him. The faint sound of a phone buzzing inside, signaling that his fight was just beginning. The story was far from over. Jake's attempts at diplomacy quickly hit a wall thicker than the wooden fence separating his yard from Patricia and Cheryl's manicured garden. The sisters' arrogance was a barricade far more formidable than he had anticipated. The day after the car disaster, Jake stood by the outlet once more, this time armed with determination instead of frustration. His voice was steady, trying to sound calm yet resolute. "Patricia, Cheryl, we need to talk. You're putting my house at risk by using that outlet. It's connected to the septic system pump. It's dangerous and expensive to fix." Patricia's lips curled into a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, come on, Jake. You're overreacting as usual. We've been charging there for weeks with no problem. Maybe you just don't like sharing." Cheryl folded her arms and added with a snide tone, "Besides, it's just electricity. If it's really connected to something important, that's your problem, not ours." The audacity left Jake momentarily speechless. Here were two women, standing boldly in his driveway, dismissing his very real concerns like trivial complaints from a petty neighbor. The crowd of nearby residents, some whispering from behind curtains, others watching with thinly veiled amusement, seemed to lean into the sisters' brazen attitude. He tried once again. "This isn't just about electricity. If the septic pump fails, sewage will back up into my home. It's a health hazard." Patricia shrugged dismissively. "Then maybe you should get better equipment. We're not paying your bills." Jake's fists clenched, but he kept his voice even. "I'm trying to avoid a disaster. Please just stop using my outlet." Cheryl laughed sharply, her eyes glinting with defiance. "You're powerless here, Jake. The HOA hasn't done anything, and neither will they. We have connections." That last word stung. Jake had heard whispers about the sisters' influence in the community, their charm, their willingness to manipulate meetings, twist rules in their favor. He realized the fight wasn't just against their entitlement, but a small fortress of support they had built. Days passed, and despite his pleas and warnings, Patricia and Cheryl continued to charge their electric sedan from his outlet. Worse yet, they started parking their car in front of his driveway, blocking his access with a smugness that only made Jake's blood boil. Every time he tried to back out, he was met with a glare that said, "Deal with it." Meanwhile, the damage to Jake's septic system worsened. He noticed a foul stench creeping into his basement, a nauseating odor that clung to the walls and floor. The sewage pump, overloaded and compromised, began to malfunction more frequently. Pipes rattled ominously, and small leaks began to appear. Repair estimates climbed higher than Jake had anticipated. It wasn't just inconvenience anymore, it was a crisis. Neighbors started to notice the tension too. Whispers spread like wildfire at weekend barbecues and HOA meetings. Some sympathized with Jake, while others feared the sisters' wrath or preferred to stay silent. The neighborhood, once peaceful, was now a simmering pot of gossip and quiet judgment. One afternoon, as Jake stood outside repairing a small leak near the septic access point, Patricia and Cheryl drove by, windows down, laughing loudly, making sure he heard them. Their car slowed beside him, and Cheryl called out with a mocking grin, "You really think you can stop us?" "Dream on, Jake." Patricia's face was a mask of smug satisfaction. "We're untouchable." Jake's jaw tightened. The sisters' refusal to acknowledge the damage they caused was infuriating. He knew the path forward would require more than polite conversations. It was time for a different strategy. That night, Jake sat at his kitchen table, laptop open, fingers flying over the keyboard. He researched laws about property rights, HOA regulations, and even privacy laws related to surveillance. He wasn't just fighting to protect his property anymore. He was preparing for battle. His plan was simple but cunning. First, he would gather evidence, irrefutable proof of Patricia and Cheryl's trespassing and misuse of his power. Hidden cameras placed discreetly near the outlet would catch them in the act, their arrogant faces illuminated in cold, undeniable light. He would document everything. Their daily routine of plugging in the charger, their dismissive conversations, their blatant disregard for his warnings. Then, he intended to leverage social media, a powerful tool in modern warfare. Anonymous posts showing the sisters' entitled behavior, videos capturing their disrespect, the mounting damage caused by their ignorance. The neighborhood would see the truth, and public pressure would mount. Finally, Jake would take legal action if necessary, armed with evidence and community support. He knew the sisters thrived on power and reputation. Exposing their hypocrisy might be the chink in their armor. Over the next week, Jake installed tiny cameras near the outdoor outlet and along the driveway, camouflaged among plants and paint. He observed quietly as the sisters went about their routine, arriving precisely at the same time each morning, plugging in their charger, chatting loudly, oblivious to the harm they caused. One morning, a neighbor, Mrs. Hernandez, stopped by while Jake was adjusting a camera. She lowered her voice. "I've seen what they're doing. It's not right. But everyone's too scared to say anything. Those two, they have a way of making life difficult." Jake nodded. "I'm not backing down. Someone has to stand up." Days later, the sabotage began, not in the form of destruction, but subtle disruption. Jake rewired the septic-linked outlet so that whenever the sisters plugged in their charger, it triggered a harmless but embarrassing electrical glitch. Lights flickered wildly inside their car. Strange smells wafted around the charging port. Tiny sparks popped harmlessly, but loudly enough to cause confusion. The sisters' confident smirks slowly faded as they experienced the oddities. On one occasion, Patricia shouted, "What the hell is wrong with this stupid charger? It's broken." Cheryl frowned. "Maybe it's the outlet? Shouldn't be my fault." Their bickering grew louder, suspicion creeping into their once solid alliance. Jake watched from a distance, a mix of satisfaction and caution swirling inside him. His plan was working, but he knew the sisters wouldn't give up easily. As days passed, paranoia took hold. Patricia accused Cheryl of sabotaging their car. Cheryl shot back with equally harsh words. The tension between them grew like a storm cloud ready to burst. Meanwhile, Jake's videos quietly gained traction online. Neighbors shared clips showing the sisters brazenly ignoring warnings, plugging in without permission, and smirking when confronted. The comments ranged from amused to outraged. Pressure was mounting quietly but inevitably. Despite the brewing chaos, Jake remained vigilant. He knew the climax was approaching, but wasn't yet sure how it would unfold. The sisters' arrogance might lead them to one final, catastrophic mistake. One evening, Jake reviewed the footage, pausing on a clip where Patricia glared defiantly into the camera, mouthing the words, "This isn't over." His lips curled into a grim smile. It wasn't over, but soon the balance of power would shift. As night settled over the neighborhood, a faint hum pulsed from the septic system, a reminder of the invisible forces Jake was now controlling. Somewhere deep beneath the earth, the pump prepared for its reckoning. The quiet before the storm. Jake shut his laptop, heart pounding with anticipation. Tomorrow could change everything. And with that lingering thought, the screen faded to black. The morning sun cast long shadows across Jake's driveway as the white electric sedan rolled to a stop beside the outdoor outlet. Patricia and Cheryl climbed out with their usual swagger, unaware that this day would unravel everything they thought they controlled. The air was thick with tension, the quiet hum of the neighborhood carrying an ominous weight that only Jake could sense. Jake watched from his porch, the hidden cameras capturing every move, his pulse steady but alert. The sisters approached the outlet, their faces still wearing that blend of entitlement and smug satisfaction. Patricia reached out and grabbed the charging cable, her fingers curling possessively around it like it belonged to her. Cheryl hovered close, exchanging knowing glances that masked their underlying unease, an unease they refused to acknowledge. As Patricia plugged the charger into the outlet, the first sign of trouble surfaced. A sudden pop echoed sharply, causing both women to jump back instinctively. A faint plume of white smoke wisped from the car's front compartment, curling upward like a ghostly warning. Muddy brown liquid began to seep out from under the hood, flowing rapidly down the bumper and pooling into dark, sinister puddles across the driveway. Sparks flickered dangerously close to the wet ground, sending a cascade of tiny golden embers dancing like fireflies in the early sunlight. "What the hell?" Cheryl shrieked, eyes wide with alarm as she took a step back. Patricia's expression twisted from confidence to panic, her hands trembling as she tugged at the charger. Jake didn't move. Instead, he held his ground, watching as the sisters' carefully constructed facade crumbled before the gathering neighbors, who had started to spill out of their homes, drawn by the commotion. Some gasped, others whispered behind hands, but all eyes were on the spectacle unfolding in Jake's driveway. The stench hit next, thick, nauseating, unmistakably foul. A wave of sewage fumes washed over the scene, making a few onlookers wrinkle their noses in disgust. Jake's heart sank. This was the septic system's betrayal made visible, a grotesque testament to the sisters' reckless misuse of his property. Patricia's voice cracked as she shouted, "This is your fault, Jake. You did something to the outlet." Cheryl, still trembling, added, "You set us up. We were just charging the car." Jake stepped forward, his voice calm but edged with steel. "You plugged into the septic tank's pump system. Every charge you took was draining it, damaging it. Now look at this." He gestured toward the smoke, the liquid, the sparks. "You were warned." The sisters sputtered, their faces flushing red with humiliation. Patricia glared at the gathering crowd, but the smugness was gone, replaced by raw embarrassment. Cheryl's eyes darted nervously, realizing the neighbors' sympathies had shifted firmly to Jake. The HOA president arrived, clipboard in hand, his expression grim as he surveyed the damage. "This is a violation of property rights and safety codes. We'll be issuing fines and cutting off any unauthorized access immediately." Patricia tried to protest, but the weight of the evidence was undeniable. Her voice faltered as Jake handed over the footage from his hidden cameras, showing their repeated trespasses, their blatant disregard for warnings. The sisters were powerless now, their influence dissolved under the harsh light of public scrutiny. As emergency repairs were arranged and the septic system technicians arrived to assess the damage, Jake felt a surge of relief mingled with exhaustion. The battle had reached its climax, justice served in a dramatic, unmistakable way. Later that evening, Jake sat alone on his porch, the sun dipping below the horizon and painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The driveway was still stained, the car covered with a tarp to hide its scars, but the air was lighter. Peace, tentative but welcome, had returned. He chuckled softly, recalling the battered metal sign that had once stood near the outlet. "You charged the wrong way." Jake had replaced it with a new one, cheeky and unmistakably clear. "Unauthorized charging ends here." His phone buzzed, a message from a neighbor thanking him for standing up to the sisters. Another ping, a news alert about a viral video exposing neighborhood disputes and entitled behavior. Jake smiled, knowing his quiet fight had become something bigger, a reminder that karma often catches up with those who think they're above the rules. But beneath the satisfaction, a small seed of caution remained. The sisters had been humiliated, yes, but their stubbornness was legendary. He wondered if they would fade quietly or plot a new way to strike back. Jake's gaze drifted toward the darkening street, the silhouettes of neighbors settling back into their homes. The fight for his home and his peace might be won for now, but in this quiet suburb, drama had a way of lingering like a stubborn shadow. The night deepened, stars glittering faintly above, and Jake felt ready for whatever came next. Whatever storm awaited, he would meet it head-on, armed with evidence, resolve, and the unwavering belief that justice, no matter how delayed, was always worth fighting for. And so, the story paused victorious, but far from finished.